Good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Taylor, and this is the December 2022 Harbor Management Commission meeting. I'm here at Sullivan Independence Hall with Jack Hirschler, Bill Perugini, Don Hyman, alternate Jeff Warren, Betty Gabriel. In the audience, we have Devin Santa of Race and Jeff Engborg of Pequot Yacht Club. On the line, we have Doug Metchik, the Harbor Master Brian Leclerc, and I'm hoping that Sam Cargill joins us soon. But let's call this meeting to order. And
did you press the people on the line, can they hear us? Because you didn't.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. I didn't mute anybody. I haven't done any muting. Thank you, those of you on the call. Let's call the meeting to order and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty, and justice for all.
Season's greetings, everyone. The first item of business this evening is to approve the November 15, 2022 minutes. They were circulated with the agenda. Can I have a motion? Jack moves. Can I have a second?
Second, this is Doug.
Thanks, Doug. All in favor? Are there any discussion, any questions? Any corrections? Hearing none, can I, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Great, okay, let's move right along to my report. After our last meeting, I contacted Jared Schmidt, Chief Financial Officer, copied Bill Hurley, Sam Cargill, Jeff Stedman, and Betty Gabriel. The reason that I got in touch with Mr. Schmidt was at Betty's suggestion, because the town likes to know about possible capital projects ahead of time, and we had some concerns about the condition of the piers at the lower wharf, and I wanted the finance people to know that there may be some kind of emergency funding that would be necessary and or long-term planning to make repairs down there, and that was the nature of my communication with Mr. Schmidt and the others. I also, on the 21st, received the FOIA letter from the town clerk's office. It's embedded here in the agenda. I hope that all of the commissioners will take a look at it. It's the rules governing our meetings, and it's got a statement about conflict of interest and kind of important stuff as we go into the next year, and as we recognize our responsibility to the public and those that we serve. On November 5th, I responded to an email from Peter Bravo, who is a regular kayaker down at the Yacht Yard, and he had been out kayaking, and he said he does this frequently at the full moon tide, and apparently a friend of his, there's a chair right here, a friend of his had gotten out of couldn't get back to the dock and the boat ramp because the tide was so low, and thinking that he would walk back to the boat ramp, he got out of the kayak and went in up to his waist and struggled mightily to get back to the ramp and to solid ground. And the email was requesting that we dredge in and around there, which of course we would like very much to be able to do, and I explained to him the circumstances and the situation that prevented us from dredging that area. And in my response, I copied Anthony Calabrese, Parks and Rec director and suggested that perhaps a sign warning folks that they shouldn't be getting out of any vessel into that mud was not a good idea, and even at very low tide, he probably could have gotten over to the town dock and gotten out. Not that he would have been happy to be there, but at least he wouldn't have been up to his waist in mud. So in any event, I have not followed up with Anthony Calabrese or with Justin Cathcart, and I copied Don on it because Don is in the process of doing some press releases and publicizing our work down there, and I thought it's important for him to know that we're getting these kinds of comments and emails from folks all the time. On December 5th, Jack approached Mark McDermott, the RTM moderator, and invited us to present to them. I, on December 5th, emailed Jackie Bartolone, Chief of Staff to the First Select Woman, and invited Jack and me to present to her and Brenda. We did present to the RTM last night and to Brenda this afternoon. We covered 4 issues: the update of the plan that will be coming before the RTM sometime this year, we hope. We covered the Cohen case and the impact and potential impact that could have on Harbor Management Commission authority. We talked about dredging the channel, and we talked about the lower wharf and the conditions of the piers and the condition of the property that was swapped with the town down there at the lower wharf. And then finally on December 5th, I copied my letter to Jared Schmidt back in the early part of November. I forwarded it on to the Board of Finance Chair at Brian Leclerc's suggestion. So it's been a busy month. Jack, do you have anything that you want to report to the group about our presentations to the RTM last night or to the First Select Woman this afternoon?
Well, it's interesting. Mark McDermott, who's the moderator of the RTM, suggested to me before the meeting started that it's Christmas time, and he guessed that we would be in and out of there in 30 minutes. Well, he was wrong. We were there for an hour or so with a lot of questions from members of the RTM, and it was good. They were engaged. Many of them were participating by Zoom, but people in the room in particular had lots of questions for us.
Right. I thought it went very well. We covered those 4 topics in both meetings, but the questions from the RTM members last night covered the full range of pretty much everything that we touch and get involved in, and clearly they were very grateful that we came to fill them in on what it is we do and what our responsibilities are. So,
was there any thread to their questioning, concern, or misunderstanding, or no understanding? Any pattern to what they were curious about?
There were questions about the edges of our jurisdiction and why we don't have jurisdiction over the entire town's waters, and related to issues that folks are having in parts of town that are outside of our jurisdiction. There were a series of questions about the safety issues related by children jumping in front of and into the Federal Navigation channel. And the dangers that presented, and several people followed up with emphasizing their concern about that and what more we could be doing than having language in the town code as well as signs at the raised pier. But I can't think of others that were sort of a theme.
No, there was no one theme. There were questions related to the 4 topics that we brought up, and then being on the water in general, and you have a harbor master. Some of them didn't realize that we even had a harbor master, and what does the harbor master do? The one question that was how often do you have to dredge was very interesting to explain that, regardless of how often you dredge, the sand keeps coming, and it's been a problem since the 1800s to keep that channel clear. So, but no, there was no one thread. They were very eclectic far-ranging questions.
They were interested in the case of Cohen and Deep and interested in having us help them to understand how that could, going forward, have an impact on us if there isn't a legislative change to revert back to the previous understanding of how the Harbor Management Act is understood by Deep and by the Harbor Management Commissions in the state. But they were, I think, gratified to hear that we're going to be working on trying to get a legislative fix.
Right. The question, have you contacted the legislative delegation, came up both in our meeting with the First Selectwoman and with the RTM. So there was a lot of support actually for moving forward with trying to get a legislative change or clarifying legislation in this next session. So a lot of support for that. So it was very interesting meeting. And we made Jeff had updated the harbor management, the Southport Harbor past, present, and future. He updated it this month. The updated version is now on the website. I think there were 3 additional slides, Jeff, maybe 4. One that had the Cohen case referenced.
The lower wharf, and then we remove as a priority to work to update the mooring rules.
Right, because we'd already done that.
That's been accomplished.
So the December 5 version of Southport Harbor past, present, and future is on the website, and we sent that link to the to all the members of the RTM, and we provided the First Selectwoman with copies of that today. So.
I guess the last thing I would say on this is that it was 3 years, I had looked it up since the last time that we had done an update to the RTM, and the membership changes a little bit, and also just getting in front of them on a regular basis is not a bad thing for this commission to be doing. So to bring them into our thinking about what the most important issues are before they have to make any decisions in connection with them is just very good for our relationship, I think, with that body. And I think with the First Selectwoman, I feel the same way, that having some sort of a periodic opportunity to update on the most important issues of the commission are important things to do.
Were there any budget or financial questions of any kind?
No.
No, actually, no. Jeff?
Was there a discussion about the possibility of the town providing a cost share for the construction grant, or did you not bring that up?
Go ahead.
We had with the First Selectwoman, we had a discussion about the project that we're going to be proposing for Lower Wharf and what the current estimates that we have from race is, and we'll hear more about that, I imagine, tonight. And it sounded to me like the town executives are contemplating this being a town responsibility, the portion that's not borne by the ship grant.
Yeah.
So I think I guess I was trying, the table's been set for that to be.
That's what I meant, the table set.
Yeah,
right.
There's an expectation.
Right. And we did mention the cost to the RTM last night, and they really didn't bat an eye. There were no follow-up questions that I recall.
No.
So people know that it's $800,000 to do the wall and the so. Any other questions for Jack or me about those 2 presentations? Harbor Master LeClaire?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My report will be relatively brief. This is the quiet month of the year for the Harbor Master. Since all the vessels are out of the harbor, we are preparing for the renewal process, which will begin in earnest in less than 2 weeks. Mooring inspections will take place of the moorings that have come out in January and February. I'll coordinate with the club. And the only incident to report is the USGS buoy somehow flipped itself upside down, or was flipped upside down. They were notified. They brought their boat out and righted it and corrected it, and no damage was done to any of the electronics on it. So all is well.
Well, that's a relief. Any questions for the Harbor Master?
I might just say about the USGS project that is Vicky I guess Brian is the overseer of the project. She's going to talk to the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission and Shellfish Commission about the overall project, because they also have some monitors in Norwalk Harbor. So the Harbor Commission in Norwalk asked for the same sort of discussion that we've had with them. And I'm not sure if that's maybe in January that will take place.
Interesting, good. Any other questions?
If you have information on that, let us know, because if it's remote, maybe a number of us
yes,
who are available can listen in and it'd be a good presentation.
We'll do.
And that's next month, Jeff, in January?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
But I'm
Okay.
supposed to be in the near future, so the near future would be January.
Okay.
Maybe.
Any questions? Any other questions for the harbor master? Super, thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Tonight we have a rather substantial discussion about Lower Wharf and Lower Wharf activities. We have Race to present. Devin, do you have what you need to?
Well,
I think this is a screen.
We were prepared for downstairs, Devin. Sorry about that, but
no worries. I put together a slide deck, and I brought handouts of the slide deck. So I think I can just hand these out and
Okay.
do what.
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
I
can't believe that we couldn't.
I'm adaptable.
do you want this? We also have this, Devin.
Hopefully there's enough of those, but yeah. Let's just see if these work, and then
Okay.
Just a couple tools. Have a similar conversation. So by way of introduction, my name is Devin Santa, president of Race Coastal Engineering. And we've been working with your commission on the Lower Wharf project for a little bit now. So the project at hand, we started touching on some things last week, or last month on this. The project at hand right now is specific to the Lower Wharf and not Yacht Yard, but is a derivative of a project that we actually down in 2000, which was inclusive of Yacht Yard and included dredging, improvements to the boat ramp, and then over at Lower Wharf, a community sailing dock, as well as improvements to the fishing pier and seawall structures. Over the course of time, since that 2007 project, the boat ramp a large portion of the boat ramp was constructed. The community sailing dock was removed from scope. Dredging has been kind of held up in the quagmire that is the current dredging situation in Long Island Sound. And the remaining project elements of the wharf at Lower Wharf and the seawall at Lower Wharf are now in discussion and the topic of today's presentation discussion. So with that background, I'm kind of going through what I've prepared. The site we're talking about now at Lower Wharf has about 350 feet of seawall in those two bump out shapes, and a 50-foot long by 6-foot wide timber wharf currently in use, and remnants of about a 40-foot T head to the north. And that shows up on our second sheet there. Flipping through, one of the first elements, probably what people see more than anything is the seawall cap, and maybe some sinkholes behind there. The first photo showing a sinkhole behind the cap and wall near that northern bench. If we flip on to the following sheet, you can see some, again, the deterioration of the cap as well. And nothing terribly alarming, though maintenance is deserved in this. It's, whether it should or shouldn't be used as such, it does become a walking surface. They will walk around it, and if you have loose, cracked material, that's great.
So what's a sinkhole exactly? Is that when the underlying is because of the
Yes,
intrusion or?
yeah, soil, when you have these open jointed walls like you have there, just stacked up stone, there's nothing stopping the soil from running through it. And there's a good and a bad thing. With the open joints, water can come and go through the walls. So it's not trying to hold back water, it's not trying to act as a dam. So that's good, it relieves load significantly, but it also can.
The load of the water on the
load
wall.
of the water behind it.
Got it. So it alleviates that, so it doesn't do as much mechanical damage to the wall.
Exactly, the loads are so much less.
Got it.
If you're not trying to retain the water. But the side effect of that is you often lose sand.
And the benefit to that doesn't erode that barrier, because it's permanent.
Well, it could erode. The drawback is you get sinkholes because soil running through the wall.
It's beneficial that it's permeable, so that you don't have to replace that wall on is that correct? Or
I think it's beneficial, it's permeable because it's a lighter structure and not subject to the same loading conditions.
Got it.
So, but the side effect of that is you can get sinkholes. And if we go back to, what's the mark on number here, sorry.
Second one to the third one.
This sheet here,
Right.
it's kind of tough to tell what's going on in that photo, but that's like a hole in the ground that might be about a foot. And it's just an ankle breaker if you're walking around with your dog there and you don't notice it. So the solution to alleviate those concerns, one, you put a solid barrier there. You could put sheet pile, you could put concrete, something that doesn't allow soil to run through it, which also wouldn't allow water to run through it, which would mean heavier structure.
So the sinkhole is a common symptom of that, because when the water comes in the soil, the underlying sediment is going to be pulled out, and that'll create a deficit in the top surface.
It's very common behind any open jointed wall. And if you were behind a steel sheet pile bulkhead, you'd worry a little bit more, but because this is an open jointed wall, you say, okay, this is the price of admission. And there are ways to alleviate, not necessarily eliminate that. And one of the things that we do often is put a filter fabric behind the wall. So excavate down, maybe not the full wall height, but some half the wall height, and install a plastic fabric. I'm sure you've seen them at any construction projects. These black sheets. And they allow water to come and go through it, but they hold the soils. So, flipping past the caps here, and then looking at the seawall proper. A couple photos here. This is at the north portion of the site. And you can see it's random selections of stone, open joints. Water can run out. It's relatively plumb, no obvious signs of bulging. But for the area south of the fishing pier, which is this photo here, you can see that section of wall had a concrete parging over it that's largely failed, and you can see stones falling onto the grade in front of the wall. So that's of the wall structure, the area to the south of the fishing pier is our highest concern area. And for reference, that would be along this stretch here. A few more photos of the seawall. For one reason or another, that sand in front of the seawall, in that little pocket north of the pier, it's like the most gorgeous sand in North America.
How do you think that gets there? You know, because that's built up over time. So how would the sand from the sand spit get across the channel and build up in that area? Or is it?
It's probably probably in massive easterlies, southeasterlies, when this is all overwashed. So the waves are coming in here, they overwash this structure, they end up here with heavy sediment load in there.
Mm-hmm.
And sand can drop out of suspension pretty quickly because it's dense. they probably travel this way in the wave-induced currents, and then the tidal-induced currents are running out here.
Yeah.
So it probably gets trapped and dropped out of suspension. There's my working theory. But it's beautiful sand for whatever reason. Maybe that reason, maybe not. The heavier sand probably falls out of suspension earlier, so it's probably the finer grained sand that makes its way over there, falls out there. Yeah, check it out at the low tide. It's beautiful.
You looked at that some years ago with John, I remember. You were evaluating or analyzing how that sand was washed over.
Yeah.
And then you were looking at the wind directions.
Yes.
So the wind washing, or the waves washing it over the jetty, that, like, as you said, that's in the channel. And then if the wind is coming from the south, that pushes it around too.
Yeah, for you to get the overwash condition you can have this overtop in still water if you have big northeasterlies.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have waves. You need to have some easterly component or south of east, at which point your waves are kind of coming up through here. And once they're going to break on this structure, and they're just going to create this kind of heavy sediment-loaded soil here. It's going to, again,
it's a different project, but everything is interrelated with the movement of the sediment.
And actually, what happens here, because you have this narrowed section, you have an acceleration or jet or Venturi effect, where your currents will accelerate through here. And the interesting thing, when we surveyed this after, I think it was Sandy, the channel was deeper after Sandy, not shallower.
Really?
It had narrowed a little bit, but got deeper.
Wow.
The channel that was still, the width of the channel that was still existent.
Yeah.
The channel was still significantly pinched.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the velocities coming down here, and there's a whole theory on inlet stability I can get into and bore you to tears with, but the narrower it gets, the faster the water gets, which tends to scour it back out, and you tend to find an equilibrium, which is why this has never closed, right? If it gets narrower,
The currents are pushing.
and the currents will clear it out. So I think from a harbor perspective, we have a nice ability that it will stay open. Whether it's wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic and opties and all that is a different question.
Right.
But the fact is, likely, the more you widen it, the more frequently you'll want to narrow, unless you manage the...
That's a challenge, right?
Yeah, and some is, this used to be exposed, the sand used to be lower there, you could create a sediment trap over here.
You're getting into one of our next projects.
Okay, I'm sorry. I hopped across the harbor. Well, let me get back onto my shore. I just geek out and those things here, so. Okay, so a few more seawall photos. This seawall photo here, this is again south of the fishing pier. You can see here almost a small stone underneath, behind the armor stone over here. The wall is starting to fail.
So, Devin, does this mean that the wall is less and less safe as these stones fall out, or?
Yeah. The one thing that works to your advantage too, that the wall is a lot shorter and height here than it is over here. It's probably only, in the area where it's the worst, it's probably only 5 feet tall. I don't think it's 6 feet tall. That's sweet. In the area where it's in better condition over here, it may be close to 10 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
So a failure would be less, catastrophic is too big a word, but impactful.
It looks like the water only percolates at extreme high tide in normal tides on the seawall.
You mean overtops it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think.
Because you have all those stones underneath it that are exposed at low tide.
Yeah. And at high tide, they'd be underwater. The water would to some extent, go through that wall, saturate the soil behind it, when the water goes back out, the water, the tide goes back out, the water comes back through the wall.
Right.
So again, it's happening a couple times a day, every day of the year, for
Okay.
the whole life of this
200 years.
Yeah, so a little bit of sand going out each time all of a sudden. The next slides I have, they're the fishing pier. And a couple photos there of interest. And probably the middle one might be the most interesting. Now, that's the Pazza. There's a whole lot of marine borer damage, and it's essentially hollow. Now, not every pile is like that. There's probably two that had that level of damage, but that is a very compromised pile.
So can I ask you, Devin, is that structurally suspect?
Yes.
Yeah. So two of the piles we could say are structurally suspect.
Or more. Or more. Yeah.
At least two.
Yeah. And our scope was a cursory overview, not a full in-depth structural assessment of.
Right.
But yeah, from the structural overview, yeah, these two are very compromised. The diagonal bracing in large part is broken off, or not connected at the top.
And what exactly is marine borer damage?
Worms.
Boring their way through.
Yeah. They're shipworms. Those big problems with the boats and ships of old when they were made wood and clad in copper to not have the worms either. So they enter the piles and then travel down to the inside the soil.
Sorry, it's getting noisy, sorry.
The other photo here is what I'll call the north end of the T-head, which was for some discussion. But that was, decking was removed on that some years ago, I think even prior to 2007. I don't think ever in my involvement that it had ever been decked. So for some reason that was condemned by the town, and they pulled the decking off but left the substructure there. So if we go into recommendations right now, the clear recommendation that I have is repairing the section of wall south of the wharf. And this stretch here, maybe wrap it around the corner. And again, this is the area, it's the shortest wall height, biggest wave exposure. So understanding why that's getting beat up. The wharf should be replaced based on the level of damage we're seeing, and I think your commission is faced with the decision of is it replaced as a T-head, as it originally was, or as an L-head, as it currently is. From a technical perspective, it's both are fine. It's from your operational perspective, what the public wants, what you want to provide. There's where the difference would lie.
When you created your preliminary pricing cost estimate for this, were you contemplating the T or the L?
We had it broken out of one leg of it and the other leg of it.
I'm trying to remember what the total that we were operating with, was that the L or the T?
I don't recall.
I don't know what numbers we got in front of you with the 750, and the numbers that we did are pretty stale.
Okay.
But you had three components to your estimate. The north pier and the south pier and the wall itself.
Yeah.
So, but the south pier and the north pier were one piece?
No,
It was broken out.
Oh, it was broken
broken out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both.
But I don't know where that relates to the number that's in front of the RTM right now, because I don't.
Let's see if I can find it.
That'd be helpful, yeah.
The seawall cap throughout should be replaced, and a solution to address the sinkholes would be prudent. So those are the 4 action items that we recommend. That said, I think there's some feedback that we require from the commission before we put the application together. Specifically, and some of this goes into how you want to strategize an application. There's school of thought that says go apply for more than you might do to give yourself the option of doing more under the lifespan of the permit. Recognizing you might not do it, you might do it. It gives you some optionality. Reasons not to do that, it can creep the scope of the job. It can make the job appear more than it might ever be, which could concern constituents, could concern taxpayers, could concern neighbors. So I don't know what side of the coin this commission's going to fall on, other than to say that both are valid approaches. And as a consultant, we're happy to talk about it, but we need some, as a design team, collective guidance as to where the commission would fall on either approach. And that said, it would really be, do we permit the T-head or do we permit the L-head? And do we permit more seawall repair than replacement than just the this section here?
So Devin, how long is a permit?
5 years.
We've anticipated extension, at least a couple of years extension, right? That's what we had with the previous permit.
Yeah.
And I found the cost, if you bear with me, your estimates, so that the pier, including the access, the south pier, including the access to it, you had that estimated at $232,000. And the pier, including the area north of the access, and that would involve drilling the pilot.
Yeah.
That's $220,000.
Yeah.
And then the seawall you had, let's see.
So look at what this.
Seawall is $160,000. But then there's also additional costs having to do with engineering, mobilization, and demobilization.
Yeah,
and demolition.
And that seawall, I don't think was for replacement of any section. It may have been capped in isolated stone. So I have to look. When's that email from?
It's from Steve.
Yeah.
Just bear with me. I'll figure out how to do this now.
Last summer, I think.
Last summer.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Oh, I figure out how to do this.
So while Jeff is looking, Devin, so in order of importance, did are these in order of importance? Your recommended actions?
If the wharf is first, yes.
Yeah.
No, the wharf would be the most critical. So if I were to put it in order of importance, I would say replace wharf, repair wall, repair cap.
Okay.
Hey, Devin, it's Brian Leclerc. A quick question on the fishing pier. Given what you've now commented on regarding the hollow sections and several of the pilings, does action need to be taken immediately to tape that off, to close it off for public access because of a risk of failure and injury to people?
I think that'd be prudent. I think Phil Hurley's looked at it in the towns we have. I have seen situations where capacity restrictions are enabled, and that's another potential solution. I mean, without any kind of capacity restriction, that could be considered a gathering area, which by code could require 100 PSF load capacity, 100 pound per square foot load capacity, which wouldn't be able to be achieved. But I've seen situations where you say, no, this is limited to 4 people or something like that, which gives you a little bit of wiggle room in risk management, but that would be on the town to make that decision on their risk.
Yeah.
So if we were recommending the number of people, if we were going down that kind of a path for the town, what number would you be comfortable with?
I need to look at it more. Again, we did not look at that structure and the level of detail to do that sort of.
Sure. I believe now it's limited, it says maximum 10 people or 12 people.
Okay.
Something like that now.
Probably to that.
Is that picture with the bore damage,
Yeah.
is that one of the supporting piers?
Yes,
One of the
it's not one of the fender files.
Okay.
So the option, I'm looking at the north end, so the option for us is really to include repair to the north end of the wall or to not include that. So I'm looking at the photograph that's showing that. That's the page that says seawall, and the picture on the left is north end seawall.
Yeah.
And you've got a circled open area there. I'm just trying to get a sense for your perspective. Again, I wasn't focusing so closely on that when you went over. What's the real state or condition of what we're seeing in this picture here?
What's the circle? That's just the sunlight.
A red circle around an open area, looks like missing stone there, a gap.
Oh, yeah. Got it. Yeah, there's the gap in stone. So, along this section, you just do chinking. You take the gaps of stone and fill.
Okay. So in terms of scope of the project, doing that sort of fill, is that a significant increase in the scope to do that chinking?
So it's a long bit of wall. So it could be a six-figure number, I'd say. Low six-figure.
Your cost estimate was in July of this year,
Okay.
your opinion of public
Okay.
cost.
And I'm sure I'm sure we just looked at our old number and tried to put some kind of escalation on it. We haven't been tasked with a revised opinion of cost.
Well, we did that quickly because at that time we were anticipating applying for a grant to the Connecticut Port Authority, from the Connecticut.
Yeah, so I don't want to diminish it, but I just want to say costing was done initially in 12. It was advanced in 18, and then it was advanced again in that call over that summer, so.
So Devin, you need from us, once again, a discussion and decision about the pier.
Yes. And would you want to incorporate more seawall repair as part of this permit application?
Does
So
that
again, the
make,
north end.
Yeah, anywhere other than, yeah, you'd say, yeah, we may repair any or all of that.
but you're not applying for a permit though, because you're applying
Certificate of permission.
certificate of permission. If
Correct.
we do more, might that kick it into the permit phase, or?
Shouldn't, because it's retention and maintenance of existing, or grandfathered structures.
Could you explain the difference between certificate of permission and a permit, just so
Yes,
everybody's
a
on the
certificate of
same
permission or COP is, it's a specific statutory device to allow authorization of maintenance of permitted or grandfathered structures or works. It could include dredging, but it's really intended for something that has passed authorization.
Like this, and it's a quicker process, because it doesn't require public notice and potentially a public hearing.
Yeah.
And it could potentially be approved, well,
It could be approved overnight.
overnight, but
That rarely happens.
Really
I've seen instances where they've approved in a week. Statutorily, they have 90 days.
Okay.
As opposed to a full permit, a full structures dredging and fill permit, where statutorily there's no limit.
So in your opinion, looking again at the north end of this, and the question about whether we want to do repairs here, if we repair the cap, which spans the whole area, if we don't repair the wall, is the cap going to crack in the north end because of those gaps that we just...
Yeah, you have that risk. The one thing I'll say, to be honest, looking at masonry walls is not an exact science. And we could look at it now and it could fall down tomorrow. When we go look at it, we look for telltale signs of failures because we can't see behind the wall. And the telltale signs of failures would be bulging, stones starting to bulge out, an overall rotation of the wall, either the top rotating out or the bottom rotating out, or excessive differential settlement. Stone masonry walls are really tough. And they're made up, the way they work is just by their own sheer gravity. So for us to say definitively, okay, is this big enough, strong enough, you really need to excavate behind it. And say, okay, is it, for a wall that's 10 feet tall, you'd want it to be about 10 feet wide at the base, 8 feet wide at the base.
this is real interesting, sorry to prolong it, but we've written that the lower wharf was built in the 1700s.
Right.
And it was for the purpose of the town granting this land to be backfilled and built a wall around for the purpose of a shipyard.
Yeah.
So these stones that you show on your drawings labeled seawall, assuming those stones were put in place in the 1700s?
No, I don't know. I was looking at the 34 aerials, and it didn't look exactly the same.
It looks funny. It's hard to see on the.
I thought it was gonna look exactly identical.
No, there was some other funny thing. We put together those compilation of those photographs, but we do know that it was originally built in the 1700s. I mean, this is a point of historical interest, but
yeah.
And we were trying to figure out when the pier was built. That's something different that you.
Yeah, I don't think a pier could be that old.
Oh no, that shows up on the 1950s photo.
At one part, the north part looked like it was much longer, it went all the way to.
Yes,
here.
but the harbor removed that north part some years ago, with a permit to do that, thinking ahead for the community sailing program being there.
Yeah.
But you're saying, Jeff, that those stone walls could date back to the 1700s?
That's what I'm
It
thinking.
doesn't seem like it if you look at the 34 aerial, unless everything else is.
There's something, you can't, well, anyway.
It could have been destroyed and reconstructed in a different.
And then
fashion.
we get into the issue of, does the Historic District Commission, we invited George to come tonight, but he talks from Sasquatch's perspective, but might the Historic District Commission have something to say about what we do here?
Yes. This is Commissioner Cargill. I hope you can mark me present, but I think that the conversation on the lower wharf sort of bleeds into the conversations that we're having with the town with regard to a risk management perspective. I think Jeff brings up a really important point, and I spoke to Adam Cliver about from Historic, and he wants to be involved as well in any conversations, and of course with Bill Hurley and the engineer there. I think that the wharf is a clear and present danger, but it's part of a master plan of sorts. And I think there's more constituents that need to be involved with further discussions here. I mean, obviously from a risk management perspective and dealing with the town and Peter Ritchie, that part, but I think Jeff's spot on that, this bleeds into Historic, and they'll have quite a bit to say about the project, or all of this, I imagine.
Thanks, Sam. I think at the moment, though, we're simply trying to get our heads around whether or not what the scope of the request to DEEP is. And
right.
Based on what Commissioner Cargill just said, perhaps we're not there yet. If there's any modifications to this based on what Historic has said.
But when we were talking about your work on Perry Green, there was someone from Historic District, and that their comments affected what you can't replace the walls there now completely, because you had, especially on the north side, because that had historic significance.
Right.
Do you remember that? They want the facing to be attractive, to be visually attractive.
The way it is now, from the north, you see the stones, I believe.
That's the part that turns around.
Well, the south
side of that.
Yeah.
But if anything, that the recommendations to DEEP need to include Historic, and a more united front from a town governance perspective makes a lot of sense. That's what I'm.
Then we require this before we could move forward.
I think so.
We need guidance from your commission.
Is that typically the protocol, to vet it through the Historic Commission as well, before applying for a certificate of?
I would say absolutely. It can only, slow down the process if we don't include the appropriate commissions in the town. That's my concern. Then once we have as much information and we have enough people that agree on what the next step should be, then we have a united front to DEEP. That's just where I was going.
I don't think shouldn't be a problem, because remember, we're getting again the permit that we had previously that expired. So when the original permit was obtained, there was input from Sasquatch and Historic District at the time. I think it's a courtesy, at least, we should talk with them now, so that there's no surprises.
Correct.
And my understanding is what we would be seeking would be potentially the maximum that we would consider ultimately doing, and we could choose later based on additional input from others to do less.
Jeff, when we had spoke, how does this tie in with what McMahon did with that property and the stairs that we talked about and the bushes that he put there? Is that a different conversation?
Yeah.
I think that's related to the Lower Wharf, but it's not affected by our
what you're looking for here.
That's another issue that we need to address. Right. The lack of, George is talking about the lack of stairs on the south side.
Right, and
because he'd moved now, and the person that agreed to do all these things.
Correct.
we're not there yet.
Yeah, no,
we're not there.
I just curious.
Now, the question before us, I think, is Devin is here presenting, asking for our advice on how we would like Race to proceed with the permission from DEEP. And the question has come up, do we have all the information that we need so that we can advise him on how to proceed? And I guess I'm confused because we had the permit. If we're going for the COP, DEEP has approved this before, and presumably, although I don't know because it was before I was on the commission, presumably those other folks had the opportunity then to comment back in 2007, I think you said, Devin, or thereabouts, had the opportunity then to comment on the plan. And what we're really doing here is not creating a whole new plan. We're simply going back to DEEP, who said, no, you can't do anything. We're going back to them and saying, okay, we have part of a plan, the plan that you approved in 2007, and we're bringing that part back to you. Please give us your blessing. I don't think at this point we're talking about any kind of design issues or any kind of new.
Yeah, and I could bore you all to tears with my knowledge of federal and state coastal regulations. What I know about HDC regulations can't fill a teacup, so.
Right, I'm with you.
I don't know what policies and procedures for like-in-kind maintenance activities there are. But that said, you're all neighbors, so probably just saying, hey, we're doing this.
Well, I don't think it delays things to talk with the person that Sam has talked with the Historic District.
My suggestion is that we should make a decision on behalf of our commission about what we would be recommending, hold it, and let's do some double checking with the other entities.
Absolutely.
Make sure they're okay. Let's just, because I don't think we should not stop everything here while we go ask for others' view. We should actually tell them what we were recommending.
Right.
It's a courtesy of what we're going to do.
And certainly.
This is one of those things where I think the issue of the scope of the job comes in. Because if you just say, you know what, we're going to clean this up, you can all see it's falling down. Okay, great, it'll be in and out of there in 3 weeks. Versus we may tear up all of this, and you may have a mountain of soil there for 9 months. I think this could snowball, and then you go back and say, you know what, we really didn't even intend to do that. We were just hedging ourselves for 7 years down the line, and we could still do this under the permit.
Well, but your point is, Devin, if I've heard you correctly, that we can go to DEEP and we can say we're going to do the whole shooting match. We're going to do the whole wall. We're going to repair the piers, and please let us do that. And then we go to the Connecticut Port Authority and we say we've got this permit that's going to let us do the whole thing. Connecticut Port Authority, give us a ship grant. But we don't have to actually do anything until we've consulted with the other folks who might have a say in how it looks.
Right. Well, you probably want to do that before you apply. I think if you apply and don't.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we don't have to do it all at once. We can stage it.
Yeah.
Correct? We can.
Yeah. Again, my fear is if you go to HDC with the plans that show the pole wall replacement, and then it's just how long it's going to take, what's the disruption, it might create a stir.
Right.
That might be counter to the project versus saying, you know what, if we have another wall failure here in 3 years, we'll take it up with a new permit then. just so we're not dragging all this through. And I don't know the exact answer, I just, the hairs in the back of my neck are going up to propose more than you might actually do, because I think it might, it might draw more attention than necessary, because you're not intending to do it.
Right.
And then once it's drawn, once it's there, and you say, you know what, we didn't intend to do that, that might seem hollow. And someone might say, oh, they're playing fast and loose with this. So that's my feeling.
Yeah. I hear
If this was in someone's front yard, you would just say, yeah, do the whole thing.
Right.
This is in everyone's front yard.
Yeah, but remember the history of this, when we were developing the original plan and the permit, we had a number of I don't want to say heated discussions with Sasquatch and with others about what we were trying to accomplish here. And then after much discussion, it was agreed, to what we applied the permit for. So I don't know, I just think it would be a courtesy to involve the historic district now. And George, do you think Sasquatch is okay with this, or?
I mean, I would have to talk to him. We have a meeting coming up on the 9th of January, and I'd be happy to bring it up.
All right.
But I don't think there's any, without having more information.
Yeah, essentially, we're doing the same thing as what we had the permit for. Well, maybe a
It's
little
been
bit.
a while, but I think the sailing part of it was something that people felt was like,
And
they had a strong feeling against.
And that got pulled.
That's not.
But I'm just saying, just recalling what the objections were, I don't think repairing the seawall was,
So can we try here to see what we're in agreement about? So let me
Right.
throw out, starting with the wall, let me throw out this suggestion that clearly, I guess my view is that the south end that's in disrepair, this area down here around the corner, seems like that should be in scope. And from reviewing the one photo we have from the north side and the little chink in there, that seems like that may not be worth pursuing at this point in time, but it does seem like the cap with all those cracks should be in scope. So I guess my sort of, just to get the conversation started, with respect to the wall, I would suggest that we think about proposing to all that we're going to talk to, that we would, with respect to the wall, do the repairs pointed on the south side and put off the north, exclude that and do the cap work that needs to be done. And I'm not sure I understand what the repair is for the sinkholes, other than fill in soil or something.
Yeah, the excavated trench, put in bales of fabric and,
Yeah, that seems like a safety issue.
That seems like it's an important issue,
But sort of restrict the wall to those three elements, sort of?
South wall with
Cap.
the cap and
Well, the cap could run the
The cap.
whole cap.
the whole cap, the south wall, the whole cap, and the fabric to prevent and
Yeah.
fix the sinkholes.
yeah.
And I guess what I heard you saying, my early question is, there's a risk for sure with this stone structure that we're not reinforcing on the north end, that you put a new cap in there, it could crack right away because it's.
Good, yeah, but you also gotta look back at the history of the cap that was there was an unreinforced thin cap.
I'm just tossing that as a.
And
So-
there's actually one section of cap that was replaced, that we wouldn't propose for replacement. That's actually from here, so I guess however much the wall repair would go, but from here to there is new cap.
Okay.
And if you ever go look down there, you can see it's clearly different.
So we have the wall, the south wall, the cap, and the sinkholes. Do we agree I mean, it seems to me that that's kind of that's a primary issue. We could lose the wall, we could lose, people could step in the.
Really decompose.
Yeah, we could,
what purpose does the cap provide mechanically?
Not too much, but right now, I'd say you have an attractive nuisance that is cracking, it is loose. It's concrete that's this thick for the most part, maybe it goes to this thick, it's unreinforced, it's not,
People would stand there.
it's not really holding stuff together, but
Right.
yeah, it's
Cracking,
But yeah,
and people walk on it, they probably shouldn't.
and ice falls in there, the ice expands for the
Yeah.
crack.
yeah,
and
yeah,
It's
it's,
gonna continue to erode.
yeah, it looks pretty
It's
bad.
really aesthetics, and it's
But, I mean, it could cause, it could be a danger to someone who could trip, and, you know.
Right at the
Yeah.
But there's no mechanical purpose.
Not significant. And when we would go there, we probably would go with a thicker cap that would have some minimal amount of steel in it that would tend to last a little bit longer.
And I think
allow us to expand some voids underneath.
I think I understand where you're going. I mean, the priority should be the safety concerns.
Absolutely.
And so, like, from my perspective, that's paramount.
Right, and it,
Sinkholes and, you know.
and preventing it from falling into the channel, I mean, which it's already started to do.
Right. We can argue how long these stones on the north side have been there, but it's
Right.
many, many decades at minimum, so we can just let that one go for now.
Yeah, may I make a comment?
Yep, Don?
We're at the point in this rather complex project where we're trying to understand a lot of variables, and we're close to coming to some decisions, but we have more to learn, you have more to propose, and so forth. At some point, it'll be more wrapped up. At some point, it'll coalesce into something we could talk about. And I would just suggest that we should also, in our planning, include some kind of a public communication component. We have an area that is one of the most conspicuous, emotionally rich, historically rich parts of our town. The areas we're talking about are highly trafficked by people who are emotionally invested in that area. And we should not take anything for granted. We should anticipate public questions. In another day, there might have been a reporter coming to a meeting like this covering all this. Those days are gone. We had numerous newspapers around, all that stuff. That hasn't happened. We have to be the storyteller when the time is right. And we have to use the tools that are correct for that purpose. If we're going to have a clear understanding by the different audiences that are important to us, neighbors, voters, dog walkers, etc.
Right.
I think that's 100% valid. The one thing I'll say is a little bit of a departure of what the course that we set off on, which was permit what was authorized essentially in the 2007 permit. So on one hand, it's like, okay, are we just redoing what was discussed in a forum that you talked about 14 years ago, 15 years ago? Or are we going to rehash that discussion? And prudence may dictate that rehashing the discussion is exactly the right thing to do. But I was going to say, not quite what we've signed up for. Not that we need to be involved in it. You could report back and say do A, B, and C. Or our scope, we're kind of ready to launch right into permitting for one of these remedial actions. And the question right now is, are we doing 40 feet or are we doing 60 feet?
Right.
And I'm not trying to say don't
Either
do
one,
what you're
sure.
suggesting. I'm just saying.
Sure.
Yeah,
If
and
we
I'm not
do
sure
that-
when the time is. I'm just saying there will be a time.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
When we need to be engaging with the public.
Absolutely, but these are safety concerns, they're structural concerns, and it seems to me that, you know, we can't do this work in the summer. This is winter work, correct, Devin? I mean, a lot of this...
Well, I think you wouldn't make happy neighbors if you did the work in the summer.
Right,
But
so...
technically, you could do the work in the summer.
Okay, but...
But I think for all practical purposes, it's winter work.
Yeah, so we need a permit, and then we have other procedures that we have to follow in order to get the work lined up and get the work scheduled and do all those kinds of things. My concern is that, again, we are asking DEEP for their okay for something that they've already okayed that's been the subject of a lot of conversation in town over the years, and I hate to have us tarry too long when we have Race ready, willing, and able to file the permit, when we can't apply for a grant from the Connecticut Port Authority until we have the permit. It's the end of the year. I'm feeling a sense of urgency that if we can agree on some items of the recommendation from Race, that we should move ahead on that. Certainly, if there are the north wall and there are other pieces of the project that we think at this point are not necessary or not for whatever reason, we can always go back, if I'm correct, back to DEEP, because it was a project that was originally approved, and we can apply for the COP, which is a faster track than the permit, and proceed with the other pieces of it. But
exactly, which is why I think it was so important. It is so important to have this discussion, and why if this was any of our front yards, we would maybe act this differently.
Right.
So this could be an approach of, this was all authorized before, we have multiple safety concerns here and here, we're gonna address it like in kind. And then get the permits to be ready for grants and winter 23, 24 work.
And to Don's point and to Sam's point, I don't think proceeding with 3 or 4 items and asking Race to go ahead and file the necessary paperwork with DEEP necessarily excludes anybody. I mean, I can't believe that other people wouldn't have, other organizations in town don't have safety concerns similar to these. I mean, we're not trying to redesign anything, we're not trying to create anything new, we're simply trying to make it safe.
Yeah, I mean, there's another part of town where one of the bridges was failing, I think, in the salt marsh, but if I recall correctly, it couldn't be remedied because they didn't have approval from the historic commission, I believe. This is several years ago. So I guess the question is, and perhaps for Commissioner Cargill, because it appears that he's done some work with the historic commission, would that preclude us from moving forward? I mean, would the historic commission, would they have to weigh in on something that would be some intervention that would be used to mechanically support a structure that is in disrepair?
It's been there since
if I could just jump in and just the two things that are the greatest concern that I have are the 2 key words that we used, right? One was courtesy, right? With a courtesy to other commissioners about what we're doing from that perspective. The second is it's not a design phase, and it is just getting the permit back because it's expired and doing the same as we've done before. My view is that there's, I'm not sure which commissioner was talking about the emotion. Having been in the RTM and been involved with numerous issues down at the lower ward, there's a lot of emotion no matter what you do down there. And being as transparent as possible is a good thing. But at this point, to get the permit reinstated, I think we need to proceed that way. I think the issue of courtesy is important. I don't think that the historic can stop us from filing for the permit, Bill. So I think that, but it's something that I would just say that it's best to be transparent and have a courtesy to our other. We may not need to do that. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's always better to take the high road, and so I completely agree.
Go ahead, Sam.
We need to be very myopic in what we're trying to do with race, right? We need to say, but there's a lot of broader issues there that brings in the emotion. We don't want to give someone the opportunity to come in and I got to be careful how I say this. The public should have opportunity to make comments on anything that is going to happen from a design perspective, design and build, and how it'll change either the landscape or the seascape of the lower wharf, one way, shape, or form. But if we stick to what we're trying to accomplish here, I think that's important. But it's a courtesy to historic. They can't stop us from applying for a permit. And that's not what I was implying. I'm thinking that if everybody knows what's going on, it's important.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
And I think that emotion is a great word for it. People are emotionally invested down there, and anything that is happening. But this is just for a permit. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. My comment was probably I should have waited to make comments about the lower wharf itself. Is that it's more at play here, right? Overall, bringing in the town engineer with regard to the pier. Anything that we do to the pier needs to go to historic, obviously. So there's more things here that are going to impact the public. But right now we're talking about a safety issue, and I think that's really the key. So I brought up too much.
But thank you. I think to Don's point, and Don was the commissioner who was talking about the emotional connection that folks have down there, we certainly can have an announcement that we've applied for the permit to correct the safety issues down there and be in touch with people that way. And begin to let folks know that we know that it's deteriorating and that it's in need of some upgrading, and invite comments. I mean,
That's right. You know,
and
exactly.
That's
our minutes, important as our minutes are.
Yeah.
And in another day, you know, there would have been news coverage of this discussion. That's not gonna happen.
I'm not hearing disagreement with what I suggest that the scope should be with respect to the wall, but you're also looking for guidance with respect to the pier and the scope of
I knowing all the layers of this, I tend to agree with that approach, not so much from a technical standpoint as much as just making sure we effectively get through the regulatory process without overly burdening.
Right.
I don't think anything we do here would be terribly controversial, where if we did a larger scope, even just a soft authorization for it might be.
Could I
go ahead, Jeff.
add something? Is the repair of that considered a work on a erosion control? This trigger a coastal plan review by TP&Z?
It would, it's a flood and erosion control structure. I don't know exactly what Fairfield's exemptions are, because we travel up and down so many municipalities, the exemptions are so different. I would think this would require a camp.
Yeah, that's, I hadn't thought of that, but that's specifically talked about in the Coastal Management Act.
Yeah.
It's a mandatory,
and often they're administratively reviewed.
Yeah.
When it's just an in-kind replacement, not a public hearing.
And then that leaves the question, so if more than would there actually be a need for the Historic District Commission to actually issue an approval for this, for the work on the structure?
I don't know.
Well, we should figure that, I mean, we're still do what you're saying, Jack, and make a decision and recommendation, but
and figure out what the others.
But there, I think that there's a local approval process.
I would imagine there would be.
Yeah.
And usually the sequence that these things follow is get your state and federal permits first, and then the locals, because the locals don't want to see you before you have your state and federals.
Well, we can talk to TP&Z about it too, and alert them that that's coming. But again, it shouldn't be an issue, but I think it is another regulatory requirement.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Right.
Jack?
The pier is, I think, where the issues that Sam was raising are more likely to emerge. So what are people's perspectives on, we heard when you presented a month ago that the pilings to the north are also dealing with ledge issues. And so
and actually,
how should we understand that?
If you look at the last page of this presentation, and just to orient you, this would be like if you were standing on the water here, looking towards Lower Wharf. So it's an elevation view of this pier from the water. And those little targets, those circles, the black and white, those are boring locations where we do soil test borings. The dashed line down bottom is an inferred rock ledge location based on those three borings. And we know where rock is at the borings, we just don't know where rock is between the borings. Common practice is to connect the dots, but that's an assumption. What we can tell is where the wharf is to the left-hand side of this drawing, which is the southern portion. We have soil overburden of about 14, 16 feet, which is likely adequate for driven piles, not drilling. As we go to the north, we have only 5 feet of soil overburden, which isn't enough to drive piles and have them be stable, just sitting on top of a rock ledge. So that would require more invasive construction just to drill these piles into the rock ledge. So that's one of the things that might just rule that out. If you don't have the demand on that wharf right now, if you say the wharf is big enough for its intended purpose as we stand here today. No one's complained about the lake to the north. You might save yourself some dollars and some headache to leave that off the table right now.
It also would be no different than what's existed for many years
Right.
now. So,
Then what's there now,
Right.
exactly.
Also, if you look at how it's being used, I never see more than 3 or 4 people on there.
Right,
which may be all that they're allowed to have
Right.
after all this anyway.
right.
And what's the, sort of, cost differential? What's that estimated cost differential?
The cost differential is like 10 times per pile, so you go from
That's an easy decision.
2,000 to
Yeah.
20,000 per pile, or 1,500.
Yeah, that's an easy decision for me.
So, the decision is to work on the southern pier and let the north, at least for this go-round, be as it is.
And again, here's one of those things that you might be leaving on the table, because we did authorize it
The
years
last
ago.
time.
And we did ask the state, because on our client's behalf, we always want to find the most advantageous permitting process, either through time or expense. So if we had these things qualified as general permits, we like to happen. We asked the state, could we qualify this under a general permit because this was previously authorized? And they said, no, we'll let you go for a COP because it was previously authorized, including that northern leg that wasn't in place serviceable. So there was, the state did offer a little concession there. They've been known to change their mind
Yeah.
too. So there's a reasonable position they could take that even though you had it authorized before, the COP is for maintenance of existing actions. This doesn't exist. And
But why not let them tell us that? What would be the harm in applying for replacement of the north pier, and then just be dependent on whether later on we decided to do it?
Again, nothing other than if that causes a stir
Yeah.
with neighbors and people saying, we haven't looked at anything there, there's been a clean sight line for the last 20 years, and we want to keep it that way.
And that would be the difference between the L and the T, right?
Right.
Well, dollars,
Yeah,
regulatory neighbors.
yeah. It'd be good to get Sam's input just from the community sentiments. I mean, we spoke of how emotionally attached people are. It would be good to, Sam, do you have any perspective on the feedback either way for either of those options from the neighbors down there?
Sam?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Well, let's just answer the question this way. There's going to be substantial public comment from the neighbors down in the Lower Wharf and that part of Southport. And for those that just are directly live there, or those that come and visit there and walk their dogs. So I think, like I said, we take chunks of this in terms of getting permits and then be as transparent as we possibly can and have a courtesy to talk to. Jeff mentioned TPZ. I mentioned historic. I don't know about TPZ, but I could say they're historic just to give them, a heads up from that perspective. To answer your question, Bill, yes, there will be.
But again, if we are focused on repairing what we've got and preventing injury, doing it for safety purposes, as opposed to redesigning a whole other structure, it seems to me not only from a cost perspective, but from a public view perspective, where we're managing a property that we're supposed to manage in a conscientious and responsible way without perhaps doing what we'd really like to do, which is spiff up the whole area and make it like we don't like it to be. But if we don't have the money and we don't, and certainly the money is an issue. It seems to me that we make it safe and we leave it for another day.
I would agree.
Yeah, agreed. And the key here is change of any sort. But this is a safety issue. That's what I was trying to say. You, Madam Chairman, you articulated it perfectly.
Thank you.
And it's a tenfold cost.
Oh, tenfold on the piles alone. So that doesn't mean tenfold on the structure.
But just on the piles
On the
alone.
piles, but how many piles? There's 6 piles, 8 piles?
Something like that.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
that's a lot.
This is a place where many years ago, boats were tied up against this, large vessels were tied. So the historic reason for this thing being is even long, it was even longer to the north than the existing pilings are. It's a historic fact that it used to be that way, but for a different reason. And today, it's used by, like you said, 4 fishermen at a time. I just think that it's going to be very hard, even to apply, I hear you, Jeff, but even applying for a certificate, contemplating expanding what exists today, I think it's going to just create blowback that we don't need, unnecessarily, because we can't afford to do it anyway.
We can't really afford it, yeah.
Then do you apply for the permission to remove the pilings?
At this point, I think we do not. I think we let sleeping dogs lie. We have enough on our plate with the safety concerns of the wall and the pier. Perhaps somebody out there would like to donate the money to create, to fix, to do whatever to the north part of it. But at this point, I think we're really kind of stretched thin financially and from a personal.
I'm guessing the clamor is not going to be about a desire to expand it. My guess is that if we even suggested expansion to the north, that's where we would be.
Well, I know, do we want to remove them then? And then the other question is the deed, which gives the authority to the Harbor Management Commission, also, I think, makes clear that Sasquatch has a voice
neighbors too
in decisions affecting this. So
Right.
What's Sasquatch's perspective on that?
I can't speak for the group, but I think trying to expand it would probably be seen as a negative thing, and the cost, obviously, it would. What's the for those 4 people? If you're saying it's 4 people, I mean, I don't, I just.
We met 4 people at a time.
I know, but I'm just saying the cost to expand into a T formation would seem like a waste of money.
The truth is, no one in this room really knows how many people use that all the time.
Well, it's pretty consistently populated, but there are a lot of people who go down there for a variety of reasons. But a crowd on it, not usually.
The sailors are watching them pull their lines in as they go by. They're familiar with it.
Right. So, do we have a consensus that we're going to request that Devin and Race go to, or perhaps we should have a motion, seek permission from DEEP to fix the wall at the southern corner, fix the seawall cap all the way around, fix the sinkholes, and do what's necessary to repair the southern and currently usable end of the pier.
I think you said just rebuild it, right?
Rebuild? Is that the word?
What did you say for the replace?
Replace?
The replacement of the L. That's what you call it.
Yeah, it would be helpful though.
You can't reconstruct it, you have to replace.
Yes, I mean,
There's no sense in reconstructing it because of
something there.
the floor damage and all the erosion.
Do we actually need the tie-up piers, because you can't tie up?
Oh, the fender piles?
It's going to be a T, right?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No. Sorry,
Yeah, because that whole pier is high and dry on one side, there's no way to tie a boat up there.
Yeah.
It's the southern.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Do we want to include the removal of those, applying to DEEP for the permission to remove the old pilings
over here,
which we need permission to do, right? We had to get it to remove the pilings that you don't see there now.
Yes, probably prudent.
what do you think the reaction would be of?
I would ask the neighbors that live closest to it.
They've been seeing it for 50 years.
And the historic people, they don't, anything that's visible from the road, is what the HDC is going to be concerned about. And they might see that as something that's historic.
Yeah, so that's a good example of what Sam brought up. I think we should be careful.
My guess is don't include it.
That would be, I think if we I think we don't include it. We don't have enough information at this point to know
I
what
think that's a good guess, though.
Yeah.
Part of the character and charm of that structure.
Right.
It's been there for a long time.
Right, it's a historic.
The one thing I'll say is I don't think the timber elements have been there that long to be historic. I mean,
30 years or 40 years.
Probably more than that, but less than 100.
Okay.
But the historic district was formed in like the fifties, so.
Yeah. I don't know, it is derelict structure, it is.
This is what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Remove it or just let it sit.
yeah.
Correct. But, and it's really, I mean, Jeff's point is completely legitimate. The question is, are we just inviting blowback unnecessarily?
I would ask, I would run it by them and just see what they say.
Like Sam said, take
They
the high road.
HCC would prefer you come to them first and bounce ideas off of them.
We're just trying to move this along.
But we've also been advised by, folks in town government that if they're gone, then they can never be, it's very difficult to get them back if you ever wanted to replace that pier.
It's not exactly like that.
Okay.
Everything the state does is based on maintained and serviceable, and this is neither.
Okay,
So we got it authorized before under the full permit process, not because it existed there before, that kind of,
okay, that's good to know.
it helped tick a
Thank you.
box.
Yep,
But it was more, this is the historic character of this is what it used to be, it's a popular gathering spot, we want to add more. But it doesn't give you that strong position that they're
okay,
And technically, you could be compelled to remove them anyway, they are derelict and they are a hazard, so.
who would that come from?
The harbor master.
The harbor master would tell us?
Or the state, I've never really seen them do it. They
Okay.
have the ability to say, you have.
Structure's there.
Yeah.
Would they make us pay for it too?
Yeah.
Or would they tell us to remove it, or it has to go, and that they would pay for it?
What do you think?
I'm kidding, obviously, I'm kidding. Wishful thinking, I think it's.
This could be like Rockport County motif number one, to somebody, that's a stretch.
So are commissioners comfortable enough with what we've been talking about to put it in a form of a motion so that we can?
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
So can I have a motion then? We've talked about four things, correct? Repairing the southern end of the wall, repairing the cap around the whole piece of property. We've talked about repairing the sinkholes, and we've talked about rebuilding.
Replacing the L.
Replacing the southernmost pier, the T.
Yeah.
The L.
The L.
The L part.
Well, even though it is a T, it's the L.
If we
The
repair
southern
the whole
pier.
thing, it would become a T,
Yes.
Right,
which we don't want to
But
do.
you don't
Right,
want
right,
to go there.
right,
Remember.
okay.
Wait a minute, you're going with the L?
Right.
Yeah,
It's
the L.
It's basically what existed.
Yeah, it's the southern,
A new
it's the
version
southern,
today.
Only the L
Contin-
is functional.
correct, the current functional pier.
Which is the way I would explain it to people who are in other
Right.
commissions or whatever.
Right.
We're just we're correcting the condition of the current situation.
And the fix of the sinkhole is the symptom. The repair of the wall will really address the sinkhole.
Well,
Right?
the sinkholes exist throughout. The repair of the sinkhole is gonna be just digging a trench along the backside of this, maybe down 3 feet wide, putting filter fabric in there.
Okay, more than just filling it in with sediment.
You could just do that, and you could just chase the problem around. This fixes it a little more. This is one of those things that maybe you do it, maybe you don't. You're gonna have to disturb some sort of the cap stuff anyway.
While you're there.
Probably a lot less costly to just fix it as they fix the sinkholes as they arise.
So, yeah, it would be.
And how often do they, so there's a few there now, you've got one photo.
Yeah.
I agree, I think it's dangerous because someone could trip on that and they could fracture
Break a
their
leg,
ankle
break
or
an
their
ankle.
hip or whatever. I would the safety concerns, I mean, I'm sold on that. But let's say somebody surveyed it and monitored it and just filled that in, that would be a lot less costly.
Yeah, definitely.
But,
But you don't know where they're gonna pop up next, or.
yeah,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. I was gonna say Parks and Rec. That's right.
so could I have a motion? Are commissioners comfortable? Can we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to address the four areas. The four areas.
So we have a motion from Bill Perugini that there will be 4 parts of the permit that Race will seek from, not the permit, the COP, that Race will seek from DEEP, the southern wall, the seawall cap, the sinkhole repair, and rebuilding the pier. Do I have a second? Jack has seconded. Do we have any discussion? Any more discussion? Jack is second. Then let's take it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Super, folks. Thank you.
I guess the only question I have is, clarification of the demo of the north, the remnant north structure.
I think we don't have enough information to make a recommendation or a decision, I think is, and should we, in the course of our inviting other people to come, and comment on what we've decided to do, should we get more information, we will act on it appropriately and accordingly.
So no change at this time,
No change at this time.
to the northern section.
No, no, we don't have enough information. We don't know how neighbors feel, we don't know, we know the costs we don't have enough information.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Oh, fine with me.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have more Lower Wharf.
Thanks, don't go.
We have more Lower Wharf.
Wait on the Lower Wharf.
We have more Lower Wharf. The issue of the stairs and the riprap and the bushes and all of the proposals that were made by the owners of the 1101 Harbor Road back in 2019 were part of the conversation that Jack and I had with the RTM last night and with the First Select Woman today. We don't have any answers. We've let people know. The RTM members expressed concern that stairs were promised and they're not there. There's been expression of concern about the height of the bushes. And we have asked town council a year ago and have gotten no response. The First Select Woman is aware of that as of today. And that's sort of the best we can do.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were concerned about that. And I'd never seen anything like that when Mr. McMahon brought that property, and all of a sudden I was sitting here at a meeting with the town attorneys and stuff. I'm like, what? I mean, driving, but how did he get all those people so worked up? And he was concerned about the people smoking out there and stuff. And he was up there taking pictures from his window. I mean, the guy was obsessed. And then he gets away with this expansion of his property. I mean, it just left a bad impression on people's mind. Just how did he get away with all this stuff? But I personally, not speaking for Sasquatch, but if he agreed to do those stairs and now he sold the property and he's benefited from it, if I was the attorney, I'd come back and make him pay for it to do it because his property was appreciated from these agreements that was agreed by the two parties, and the town shouldn't have to pay for that. If he,
Well, and that's why we've asked the First Select Woman and the town attorney to look into it. We were not part of the transaction. We commented on the plans. And that was it until we then were anointed as the managers of that
That was
property.
spring of 2019.
And we were given full opportunity to come to the meetings, to speak, and to, and everybody was. And I know, like, Dale MacGyver did a ton of work on that. And his little summary on the whole thing, I think, is like, kind of like the Bible on it, And he was trying to find the middle ground, between the two parties, but it got approved. And
right.
Let's finish the job, That's my feeling.
Did not the RTM have to make the final approval for the transfer of town property?
They did. They said they voted on it.
So could we not go back to look at the minutes and the vote of what they?
Well, somebody said to us last night that they recalled the steps as being part of the plan and that they recalled approving that.
I think we should understand that at this point, the first selectwoman is aware of this issue.
Right.
And she needs to talk to town council to understand whether it's the original owner, the current owner, or the town who's going to have to construct those stairs, so.
And then the other issue is the hedge
Right.
It clearly says that it can only be so many feet high, and he just went in and did that, and there's a lot of things wrong with that.
Look at the photograph there.
Well, that's old, right? That's not.
Yeah.
This is 2019, and the hedge isn't there.
Right. No, the hedge was planted after the swap, and there are restrictions on how high it can be, and clearly it's higher. So
I had some dealings with the prior owner in another role, and I can only say that based on my experience, I think he would say, "We'll see you in court."
Yeah,
maybe.
That's my experience with this.
Yeah. At this point, it's really kind of out of our hands, but we have made the folks who have the authority and the ability to do something about it aware of the issues, and I don't know what else we can do except we did have copies of the original plans that showed the stairs, and that's kind of.
Do we know the new owners? Are they reasonable?
We do not. We have no reason to. Jeff?
Well, the other thing that I don't know that we ever clarified was, is the Harbor Commission responsible for the management of that property, the beach to the south? Remember we had asked the town attorney that too.
That's the same letter, yeah.
In the same letter. And Sam is thinking about risk and managing risk. If we're responsible for that little beach area, and people hurt themselves going down over the wall, that's another.
Has anybody thought about talking to the current owner of the property? So the McMahons transferred that property, they sold the property, and any of those properties that must be free of any encumbrances whatsoever. And this is obviously one of those requirements that had to be taken place by the prior owner. So the broker who was involved in that transaction should be engaged and should be part of any sort of resolution with the prior owner and the current owner.
Well, and that level of detail and involvement is, that's how the issue is going to be solved. But I don't think that that's our role at this point. I mean, we've made select women aware of the issue. We've informed the town council a year ago and asked for some guidance and have gotten none. And so I think the best we can do at this point is wait for the folks who have some authority to call those people to the table to get back to us. I mean, we're certainly ready, willing, and able to help and to iron it out. And actually, we'd love some guidance on what our role is in managing that property. But we have a lot of unanswered questions, and frankly, we're not legal representatives of the town at this point. So I think the best we can do is to let folks know, and when they get back to us, then we can decide on what course of action we'd like to take. But at this point, we don't have enough information to answer any of the questions that you've raised, any of the questions that George has raised, or that have been raised over time about the hedges and the beach and the stairs and whether or not we're supposed to put signs up. I know Betty gets emails periodically. Where the heck are the signs that are supposed to be here? We know nothing about that. So. Anyway, I won't rant on, but.
The last thing
Go ahead,
George, has Sasquatch written to the first select woman to request
but we've had people, citizens coming to us saying what are you gonna do about this, you know, the hedges specifically? I mean, I would just assume the stair part was a done deal because that's what was agreed upon.
Yeah, we didn't talk.
Nobody-
We haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
We didn't emphasize the hedge issue with anybody.
So I would think that the lawyer, whoever did the closing with the new buyer, would have had to disclose all, you know, the agreements, the easements, you know, and that would all be part of the record, and when they did the, you know, whatever they do, the title search or whatever, it would all come out and be.
But would it help now that you know the Harbor Commission has made a request if Sasquatch
Yeah, I mean, that would be something I could tell people about.
wrote to the first select woman?
People are aware of.
Certainly
that they're working.
much more top of mind today than it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe what he got away with. I mean, again, these said lawyers.
Yeah, but be that as it may, we don't have any, we don't even know what our authority is, and that's really kind of what we're waiting for.
Could you give us a quick background, because I think this predated my time and perhaps a few others, right, because this went down about a year ago, I presume?
Oh, no, in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Write down your email here.
This little area, the beach area, the riprap, and there was a, right, what did they have? They had
An easement over the riprap to the beach.
To the beach, so the property owner was concerned that the public was crossing here in his backyard and accessing the beach. And
This private
the
beach.
insurance company had
He
said.
And Sam, you know, he's in insurance, and I've been in insurance, there's no way.
Okay, let's do it.
His insurance.
But that's what he told us.
So he claimed that his property and casualty insurer had some
Which
concerns
was
about.
Chubb, but there's no way. They don't go to that level of detail.
In any case,
Just
he
pay the
got the
premium
town
anyway.
to agree to do a swap of some property, which gave the town the riprap area and the beach area. And that is now part of the town, if I understand correctly. And then the town gave up some property up in this area, right?
Which he walled off and.
It goes back many years when there was a contention as to who owned that upland piece of property. And it was going to court. I don't know if it actually made it to court. The town at first was claiming it owned that property. And the property owner, a different property owner at the time, said he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was resolved without the court, I don't know if the court actually, maybe the court did make a statement, but it was resolved that the town consented that the property owner, it was privately owned, but there would be a public access easement over the property to provide access to the shore. And then the most recent, not the current owner, but the recent owner was concerned that, as Jack said, people were going across his property.
Mm-hmm.
And so the agreement was the town gave up the easement, and in exchange, the town got that little piece of beach area.
And that's your point, that his property expanded a little bit, so he could sell it at a premium, right?
Well,
that's
the agreement, the house is here, I believe, and he kept a little tiny thin strip that went to the water, which makes the waterfront property.
But he also made a
Parking,
not a bulkhead, but a riprap around the perimeter of the property.
And what would really drove him nuts too is the cars turning around. Like he before he bought the house, he must have had no idea that cars mistakenly some come too far. And he just, I never.
There were signs that, there was, before this agreement was agreed to, the one that we're discussing now, there was another effort that he tried in concert with Tetros.
Yeah, you know, let's not go there. I think enough said about this issue.
Can I just, first of all, I think that this was already been litigated, and what I think, George, you and I can talk about this. It's a small enough village where we can get to the bottom of this and find the attorney on the transaction and the broker and make a phone call. I think it's simple as that. And it's part of the public record, and the attorney should have cleared all this, the title, and and it did not. So it should be, but rehashing what Brian McMahon did, I don't know where he lives now, Montana. And all the things that he promised, that current homeowner is responsible for.
Right, I agree, and right at the moment, you know, we've made the powers that be aware of the issues, and again, we're not unwilling to do what we're responsible for doing, but we don't have enough information really at this point to do anything, and I don't think there's much purpose in relitigating, if you will, things that we can't resolve at this point. So we're happy to raise it again, happy to invite you to come back, George, but I think at this point, the most efficient use of our time would be to say thank you for coming, and, your concerns are noted. Happy to talk to you again about it, and certainly we'll communicate when and if we get more information from the folks who...
And I'll relay this information.
Great, great, thank you.
Thank
you. Madam Chairman?
Yes, Sam?
I have to be on a 6:30 call. May I jump ahead on a couple of items?
Well...
just if I may, because
you can't see that I'm smiling, so are we moving on to the Lower Wharf project?
If we could do that, I'd like to suspend any further conversations about the Lower Wharf.
Well, I guess
I have spoken to Peter Ritchie. We have a broader conversation that I think that we need to have with Bill Hurley as well. They, as I said, the update from the last call or meeting was that they were working with their broker or vendor about a risk control report. That's the cost is for the town. So he's embedded in the HR department. They no longer have a risk management department, as I said. And so I will continue along that path with him. Hopefully have a further report in the January meeting.
Okay, good. So we've got a report coming. That's really was my question, and I don't think we have any. I think that was that was my intention of putting it on the agenda, just to find out kind of where you were on that. So that's good news. Okay, and then you're going to do a nominating committee?
Yes. A report from the nomination committee, which is Commissioner Sudman and Commissioner Cargill. I would like to proceed with the nominations for our officers. Madam Chairwoman, Kim Taylor will continue. Mr. Hirschler will continue as vice chair. And I'm proud to say that Bill Perugini has agreed to assume the role of secretary. I think it's a great slot of candidates, and I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So do I have a motion to accept the recommendations of the nominating committee?
So moved.
Don moves. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Bill seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objection? Any nays? Any abstentions? Super. Thank you, Sam. Thank you to Eric, too, who's not with us this evening. Really appreciate your doing that work for us.
My pleasure.
So, to get back on the agenda, we're doing the mooring committee.
That's an easy one. The mooring committee does not meet in the month of December, and will meet again in January when the renewal process is in full force.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Any questions about that? The renewal process, January meeting, mooring committee, mooring issues? Super. Okay. The Plan Update Committee met. We have tentatively agreed that we will have a draft revised harbor management plan available to go to DEEP late spring, early summer, and hopefully get their approval pretty quickly, and then move on to present the revision to the RTM in the fall. We have had Don got some proposals for video narration project activity, and Jeff Engborg have been working on using some software to create that narration project in a little bit different format. We've decided to put that activity on hold for the time being, in large part because we have a new website, a new town website that will be available shortly, we believe, and maybe have some different capabilities than the current one, and may color how we proceed with some of these public outreach efforts. And also because we have some major work to do with getting our legislative delegation on board with the possibility of some corrective legislation in view of the Cohen decision. So it seems that we don't have enough people and hours in the day to do all of it, so we put the narration project on hold. We have a deputy harbor master search.
Yeah, so we still have not been able to locate the elusive file. I have not been able to locate it. My IT guy was not able to find it, so I think Brian and I will probably have to recompose what we all agreed upon.
Okay.
Because I can't access the file and no one else can either for whatever reason.
Okay, but you have a paper copy.
I probably have what Brian sent. The only thing I was working off of was the electronic.
Okay.
Well, Brian,
we'll get back onto it.
Yeah, it's Brian. I'll take a look at my system. I usually save everything and back everything up. So I'll look at that when I get back tonight.
I thought there was a paper. We were gonna move forward on that.
Well, we were working off of that. The revisions were made electronically, but I don't recall a hard copy.
Okay. After the holiday?
well, if you and Brian can get together and see if you can locate his I have the job description that we put for the harbor master, but Brian then redlined it
Right.
and gave it to you, so it's the redline version.
That was the electronic copy, right?
Yeah.
So if there are any changes since then, we'll have to update it for that, and we'll have a final version, we can get this thing posted.
Yeah, we need to get it
And
posted.
there wasn't a lot, we didn't make a lot of changes. There were just a few.
No,
tweaks
but
that we
I'm not
made
gonna
on-
put something on the town.
No, right.
like
No,
that.
we
I
need to
don't
hash it
sit
out.
on
So
that,
we'll-
sure.
Okay.
So Brian, if you're available, we'll sit down, we'll go to Starbucks.
Okay,
or
so
whatever.
that, we can hopefully have that by January, you think? January?
Yeah, Betty, it's Brian. Quick question for you. For the town website, do you want a Word version or a PDF? What format would you want it in once I locate it?
Give it to me in a Word version, and both actually, and then I could create a PDF from that.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Great, okay. Any questions?
No.
Deputy Harbor Master Search. I realize I skipped sand management, and we have a press release, among other things, that I wanted you guys, the commissioners, to take a look at. Don put this together. It's intended to inform the public about where we stand on our dredging project with the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's intended to be available sometime after the holidays, or at least sometime after this meeting, depending on who we can, if everyone is comfortable with what Don has written, A, and B, if we can get any newspapers or media to pay attention.
Well, first, a big thank you, because what Don did was take input from a lot of people who were very knowledgeable, including Jeff and Kim and Brian, and synthesized that into what was shared. Have you all seen that or read it?
Yeah, it went out with the agenda.
So that's the synthesis of everything, and I think I understand that our first selectwoman has looked at it too and is happy with it. And what we're gonna try to do is I'll talk with her staff this week, and we'll see if we can leverage Brenda's periodic news publication as being kind of the premier location where it would debut, and then we would play it out to the Patch and the Connecticut Post and the Citizen. I've spoken with the reporter at the Citizen, Josh LaBelle. I told him that we were working on a status report. He was keenly interested in it.
Great.
He's aware of all of the public interest.
Can you read us the edition that you got from the first selectwoman? Because it's not on the version that was distributed to us. Do we have what she said?
You know what? It's in my car.
Oh, no.
And my other.
Okay, all right. It was one paragraph, but
there was
what does it roughly say? Okay.
Find it. But there was roughly what we developed a quote from her that talks about the fact that this is proceeding slowly but thoughtfully, and we're going to do this in a responsible way, and thank you, everybody that's involved. You know, because I think, she pointed out that it's taking more time than we want, but we're going to be doing it in an environmentally responsible way. There's a lot of parts to this, and thank you, everybody that helped out. She says it nicer than that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all. Any other questions of Don? Is everybody okay with reading about what we're doing in the paper in the next couple of weeks sometime? Great.
I think this way we kind of manage expectations for the public who are interested in this, and we're more transparent.
And it seems only fair, since we reported to the RTM last night a lot about it, and we told the first selectman today as well, it seems only fair that we let everybody know what...
One thing I forgot to add, it will go out with 2 photographs. One is an aerial view of the mouth of the harbor, and the other is that, if it's okay with you, Jeff, that beautiful picture of the eastern shore and the mound of sand that we took from that was part of the information.
So there's plenty, we can...
Yeah, there was another picture that Betty sent, with the...
Yeah.
We have plenty to choose from.
That particular picture I like because, so those 2 pictures will go.
Yeah, 2 overhead aerial shots of, you can see all that needs to be dredged.
Have a wonderful holiday, everyone. Sorry I need to leave.
Thank you for all your help, Ed.
I would suggest that whatever the first selectwoman's newsletter is gonna go out, we should simultaneously have the harbor master send the email to the math people in the online mooring system database.
Yeah.
But that's a simple thing for him to do if he's got a file to attend.
Right.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the news release, as you know, links to, in a slightly awkward way, the wonderful presentation that Jeffrey's done on the harbor, past, present, future. So that's the full story.
Right. So it'll have the link to the latest of Jeff's presentation. Right. So that's.
And Don, it's Brian Leclerc. The one thing I would need when I send it out through my bulk email through the online mooring portal, I cannot attach pictures. So if you have a link to any photos that are referenced, that would be great. There's a way we can do that.
We'll look into that.
We can do that. Thank you, Brian. That's good. Good to know. Okay, it's closing in on 6:30. Jeff, do you have any sand management updates, anything from the Corps that we need to report on tonight?
No.
Okay.
I just informed the Corps that we're putting out a public,
right, so the
information piece, press release, on the project, and that's fine with them.
Great. Okay. So the final item that we have on the agenda tonight is to vote on our meeting schedule and meeting time for 2023. Betty circulated the draft dates in with the agenda, and this schedule would be posted at Town Hall, and we will stick to it, unless there are people who don't want to meet at 4:30 and don't want to meet on the third Tuesday of the month, in which case we have to kind of make that decision tonight. But this schedule assumes that we will meet on the third Tuesday of the month, and at 4:30.
Is meeting room 2 this room?
Well, we have to ask Jen Carpenter for room assignments, but generally she can go ahead and reserve a room a year in advance. We pretty much bounce between this room and the room on the first floor, depending on whether a larger group or a more important meeting needs to happen here. But generally speaking, it would be these dates, 4:30, going forward, in this building, going forward. And if everybody is in agreement, I need a motion. If people are not in agreement, I need to hear about it.
I move that this schedule of meetings be accepted.
I'll second.
Don moves to accept the draft schedule. Bill seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone, anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Terrific, so we have a schedule for next year, we'll get that over to the town clerk. And I think, except for public comment, do we have any members of the public on the call who would like to comment at this time? Hearing,
Can I make a comment?
Jeff could make a comment.
About the Cohen case.
Oh, I'm sorry,
And how we want to pursue a remedy to that. And other towns have been discussing this, and so
Can you give us some background on that too, because that predates, right?
No, the Cohen case is the one we've been talking about.
Which one?
it affects the Harbor Management Authority. So there was a dock case in Greenwich, without going on as we can for a long time. And as a result of the dispute over a dock permit in Greenwich, the neighbor took the DEP's decision to court and argued, among other things, that the DEP in issuing the permit did not consider the recommendations of the Harbor Management Commission. The Superior Court agreed, and the DEP, in fact, said that they didn't have to. The Superior Court judge said that, agreed that the DEP didn't have to. Not only that, the judge went further to say there's no authority for a Harbor Management Commission to review deep applications in the first place. So the town of Greenwich appealed that to the appellate court on behalf of the Harbor Management Commission. The appellate court upheld the Superior Court decision. The town of Greenwich then submitted a petition to the Connecticut Supreme Court to review the decision, and that petition was denied. So now, as it stands, the Harbor Management Commission, in the eyes of the court, their comments to DEP on any application have no weight other than general public comments. And a good example of this is in Norwalk, where the largest infrastructure project in Norwalk since the 1950s is being reviewed by the Harbor Commission. Over the last 7 years, the commission provided, thousands of hours into reviewing and making comments. When this bridge proposal went to a public hearing, the hearing officer ruled that the commission had no special standing and referred back to the court case. So now we're discussing, and the significance of that bill is, for example, the Exide remediation project, which was, I think by all accounts, a successful project. And it was in large part because of the Harbor Management Commission's involvement in that project that it became successful and brought the Exide to the table. So that's a significant diminishment of Harbor Management Authority. And it would invalidate, I believe, significant portions of harbor management plans, including ours, that has a component for implementation that involves the Harbor Commission reviewing applications for deep permits. So now the only remedy seems to be a legislative remedy to do this. And so other towns are talking with their legislators. And interestingly, this morning I was in a meeting, and there was discussion about a legislative initiative on a completely different topic, having to do with trees and cutting down trees and power, stuff like that. And it was discussed that the legislative session begins January 4th. And even though this group does not have the proposed legislation in place, they talked about the importance of submitting a placeholder, which simply says we're going to submit legislation. And so that's something that we have to, I think, all work on and talk with our, I'm talking fast because it's so significant. But so anyway, we're working. Don put together an initial statement of a legislative, a harbor management alert or a news alert.
Actually, what it was a one-page brief on the issues that Jeff's been talking about. That would be the cover sheet for a briefing book that we would give to our legislators.
Right.
And the other thing that you haven't gone through yet is, of course, the Supreme Court's refusal to hear the appeal of this.
Yes,
and that just happened.
That was just a one-page denied. There was no reason given.
So it diminishes the power of the Harbor Management Commission across the state of Connecticut.
Correct.
Is there a collaboration?
That's what we're
working on.
That's what we're working on. And in fact, tonight, when I leave here, I'm going to a meeting of the Stamford Harbor Commission, and they're going to discuss this. And tomorrow night, the town of Greenwich will be discussing it some more.
How many do you work with? How many Harbor Management Commissions do you?
It seems like the talking points and the positions to be more powerful should be consistent. So
yes, that's
right. So the kind of work that we're doing here should not be replicated slightly differently elsewhere. The strength of this will be having the same story coming from every town.
Yeah, and we're talking about having this alert be put forth by the Association of Harbor Commissions.
Right.
With, attached to the briefing paper.
Right.
The briefing booklet, not the paper.
And we had a great deal of support from the RTM last night and from the first selectwoman this afternoon for contacting the delegation, the state delegation, and a great deal of concern that suddenly we might be without some authority to comment on.
The RTM members, I think our conclusion was, should receive a copy of this briefing material, because they have a lot of connections that they can then apply also.
Yeah. No, it's significant matter.
So, the one pager in its final form is the top line summary.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, too long a meeting.
No, I'm sorry. I completely, I'm jumping around on the agenda here, and I completely missed that update, which is very important.
The other thing that the court, it was interesting, and we can look ahead maybe to the redevelopment of Kenzie Point with residential properties, is the court upheld. See, the Greenwich case started with an applicant trying to getting around the town zoning code, which requires a dock to be an accessory use to another site use. So in this instance, they cleverly designed a dock that didn't attach to the land, or to the mean high water. It began a little bit waterward in the marsh, so that they didn't have to worry about the zoning regulation.
Walk across the marsh, climb the ladder, and go out to your dock.
Well, you don't even have to walk very far. But the court upheld a property owner's right to have such a dock that doesn't attach to the land. So in the case of the Kenzie Point subdivision, as you know, the subdivision approval was that there would only be one dock, and that's based on no structures in the conservation restriction area. And the conservation restriction area ends at the mean high water. So if a dock is designed to begin a little bit waterward of the mean high water line, then you get into the same situation as in Greenwich. And the court ruled that that's permissible. So there's all sorts of interesting.
And zoning already said there's only going to be one dock there, but they may have no. They have no weight in the end.
Because zoning ends at the mean high water line.
Right.
Interesting.
Scary.
Right. And also counter to the intent of the 1984 law that created the Harbor Management Commission.
Right. Completely contradictory.
That was the whole purpose of them, was to give local jurisdictions some authority over their navigable waters. Yeah.
So that's a challenge. We'll stand up for it.
And getting those briefing books together and meeting with those people is one of the reasons why we on the Plan Update Committee have decided not to go ahead with the narration projects, because we simply don't have enough time, energy, and to do all those things.
Right.
And
Jeff and I are doing a demonstration for you to look at, though, the narration.
We got an interesting question in the RTM yesterday, which would be, I think, helpful to think about as you do this briefing book, which is what things would be adversely affected going forward. Give me some specific examples of situations that could come before the Harbor Management Commission in a municipality that would, on a go-forward basis, be not subject to comment and would be offensive to people who are enrolled like RTM. So they want to understand what are things you could foresee in the future that, with this interpretation of the authority of a Harbor Management Commission, would be lost and would be viewed for people in roles like RTM members as a real takeaway from the authority of the town.
Right. Give us some examples of how this could impact us. And we'd already cited the Exide, but they wanted to know going forward.
Tell me more. Tell me other things going forward.
More than Exide. What does this mean in terms of real concrete projects?
It's an interesting question, because it's the kind of thing you could anticipate that others who are thoughtful about this might ask in other towns.
Right.
And we don't have the level of redevelopment activities, in Southport that other towns do, that require all the DEP permits. Another example is the Aquarian Diversion Project. Now that was upstream in the Mill River watershed, but we participated in that and made recommendations because of concern that the diversion of water could affect the flow in the Mill River.
Right.
And, you know, under this court case, I mean, we could do that, but there's no special standing. It would be no different than the general public.
Right, and didn't the hearing officer say that in her comments? We have the letters from the Harbor Management Commission, but they're no more, that we giving them no more weight than we do of John Q. Public.
So Jeff, what if a homeowner on Harbor Road who lives, next to the North Anchorage, which is not part of the federal anchorage, decides he wants to put a 60-foot dock out into what is now the North Anchorage area controlled by Pequot Yacht Club? Is there anything that couldn't DEEP approve that without us having any voice in that?
It could be argued that DEEP itself would deal with that issue.
So what's that?
The DEEP itself would keep that issue from happening. But the principle is that the Harbor Management Commission would have no say in it. And I think the Kenzie Point dock situation is a good example. If the property owners have clever designs for docks that don't quite attach to the land, and the Harbor Commission objects, the lawyer for the applicant could say you have no authority to make comments or review it in the first place. It's probably the most significant thing well, not a federal project, of course. But anyway, didn't mean to prolong the meetings.
No, it's an important agenda item, and I apologize for not following, getting back on track.
We'll have more to report on this after. Tomorrow night, Greenwich and Norwalk are both discussing this, and tonight Stanford is. I just need to go get to that meeting.
Okay, and so we'll have more on that in January.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just again, your involvement with the RTM and the first select woman is very impressive on behalf of the commission.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was very interesting.
And if you want to send me her edit to what we discussed, I can talk about that with Jackie tomorrow.
Yes, okay, yes.
Well, not because of us. We could sit through our thing in about 20 minutes, but they kept us there to answer questions.
Right, we had questions till after 9 o'clock. Yeah.
Great to see that level of engagement.
Yeah, oh, it was terrific, and they were enthusiastic and grateful. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was. So, any more business here this evening? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Bill's moving, Jack seconding, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? See you, happy holidays.